I want to introduce you all to Shafeka. I love Shafeka, my friend. On the legislative side of things, we also recognize the importance of coming together collectively to share best practices and support resistance to legislative threats to the guaranteed basic income movement in the form of anti-GBI legislation presented and passed by state legislators across the country. We know this is a topic that has been on many of our minds, in particular as we move towards the 2025 legislative sessions in our states. Shafeka Hashash is the director of Economic Security Project, is here to talk more about the Defense Council that has come together to do this work. Please welcome Shafeka.
All right, so while I get myself a little bit set up here, I was thinking about when Stacy asked me to give this talk and the folks who'd be on day one, Dr. Zaya, and of course our wonderful MC Maddox and Mayor Siddiqui, all these people you've been hearing from who are giving, these great uplifting stories. I thought, she must have been thinking, how can we take people, make them feel super good, and then really make them feel like crap afterwards. And so, I think that's what I'm here to do. But all jokes aside, we're going to talk about this in optimism, but we also have to just be clear about what it is and the kind of moment we're in this space. I'm going to stay on just this title slide for a minute because I was thinking yesterday about that quote that people always say is first they ignore you, then they fight you, then you win. And it's always... I was thinking about it, I was like, let me start the talk with that. Oh, it's Gandhi. And then I looked it up, and it actually isn't Gandhi. It's a lie. That's something that happened via memes and Facebook. And it's an even better quote, I swear to God. It's from a trade unionist named Nicholas Klein. And the quote is, first they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they attack and want to burn you. A little harsher. Then they build monuments to you. And I was like, okay, Nicholas Klein. And so we're just going to kind of ground this discussion in that. And then thank you to Chelsea, who's going to be my presentation clicker, if you will. So we can go to slide 2. So the opposition, we need to be clear-eyed. We need to name them. We need to know about them. I know it's tough in presentations like this. We want to balance the sort of 101 for folks who really don't know and the 200 level. I hope I'll be able to kind of strike that balance for you. We can go to slide 3. So who is our opposition? Our opposition is the Foundation for Government Accountability and their sort of other C4 lobbying arm. It's called the Opportunity Solutions Project. I want to be super clear. They are not just guaranteed incomes opposition. These folks have galvanized millions and billions of dollars, from funders, from folks who've always opposed anything progressive, can't even just think race-forward programming. I mean, we're talking about labor laws, repealing child labor laws, anything relating to a government system you can think of. These folks are truly behind it. I follow their email newsletter to harm my sanity. And it's called America First Legal. And, the things they publish in it, I swear to God, you would think are like, liberal TV shows like making jokes, and they're not. They're so accurate. And so all of these things they fight against. And guaranteed income, we should feel very honored, has now become big enough that we are part of that. We can, yeah? Oh, are the slides not working?
The slides just went down.
Okay, it's fine. I'll say the number in case they go back up, but I'll just keep going. So, and the truth is, I'd prefer you listen to me than read slides. So there are 2 forms that they've been attacking us. One is through lawsuits, predominantly attacking race-forward programming. Shout out to the Abundant Birth Project, their first ever pursuit. But, we know that that's growing. They've started using other, quote-unquote, unconstitutionality strategies in Texas and in Missouri, and through legislation. They pair this very well with comms and media about these nasty, vile things that they say about guaranteed income participants. And I had thought for a second to maybe include a clip, a voice clip of it. And I really thought it's always such an encouraging space. People know the nasty things that are being said. So I actually intentionally sort of didn't include it. So even if there were slides, you wouldn't hear it, and I feel strongly about that. I know the slides aren't there, but I'll just say the numbers in case they come back up. So we'll be on slide 5. So where have things passed? They've passed in Arkansas, Iowa, South Dakota, and Idaho. And, that sucks. We just have to be so clear about it. It is shit that we haven't been able to stop them, and, it's something we have to reckon with. But a lot of it has to do with not having the strongest in numbers movement. Now, I will say Iowa's kind of a discount to that. They've had a wonderful movement. But we have to reckon with, when you're in sort of red trifectas, what things look like, what the best strategy might do, and to make sure that, yes, you might lose, but how do we lose forward? They were also introduced in Arizona, West Virginia, Texas, Mississippi, Wisconsin, and Illinois even. And so they've been introduced in these states, but not passed through a myriad of reasons, maybe vetoes, et cetera. So we would be on slide 6. So these lawsuits in San Francisco, California, Texas, Missouri, they have clearly had chilling effects. You also have the Fearless Fund. It's not guaranteed income, but it's attacking specifically race-forward programming, a program that was specific for an organization supporting Black women businesses. And we know that that has a chilling effect. I speak to the folks that grow regularly, all of the rest of you who are wanting to do really prioritized race-forward programming, which is fantastic, and feel very chilled by it. They're even attacking the funding that pays employees' salaries, not just the guaranteed income. And it's despicable. And again, I say all this not to be a downer, but to just tell us where we are in sort of knowing what the moment is. So to meet this moment, we have to kind of be clear-eyed and think about what our strategy could be too. We know that it's a behemoth, but to wallow in despair that, billionaires are backing this, and it's the Stephen Millers of the world, et cetera. So ho-hum, sucks for us, what other issues might we be able to get involved in, isn't the way to do it. Because like I said, they're attacking any issues of progress, especially progress for families of color. And so we just want to be able to meet that moment. And one of the biggest ways we've been able to do this is creating a national defense hub. And it's taking national organizations, not just GI, so not just Economic Security Project and Income Movement and all of us, who I think we all do great work, but it's actually getting learnings and even thought leadership from folks like Local Progress, State Innovation Exchange, Local Solution Support Center, Community Change, other folks who work on a myriad of issues who've been fighting these guys forever. And we share learnings with each other. They've been helping really do tactical state strategy because, again, you might not win all 50 states, but how do you lose forward? And so just an example of something like I've learned working with these folks is that Arkansas, the first state to fall to an anti-GI bill, is where they almost always shop around. And so when you're looking for what's coming next, it's Arkansas, the state that really isn't in national media the way a Michigan or an Ohio or a Pennsylvania might be. And so we think about when we're trying to map their patterns and what it'll look like, it's actually we have maps from their past work to know what states do we think they're going to go into next. There's also a kind of newly formed, it's been working in many different ways, but legal hub. And it's folks from the ACLU, it's our friends here at Schreiber, again, that have been sort of loosely coordinated, but are now getting much more tightly coordinated together. And something I'm super excited to be able to share at the big conference. I wasn't able to, I had to stay kind of mum about it at Guaranteed Income Now because it wasn't super finalized. But over the last 4 months, we've been working with the ACLU on guaranteed income specific guidance on doing race forward programming. And so that is now coming up. And I'm going to be honest, it took a long time because I kept making it not sound like a lawyer had to read it. And the ACLU, they're just not big fans of that. And so, I hope it feels readable to folks. I think it does. It's the best you're going to get. So slide 9 would be, should I keep saying slides or are there no slides? Someone just tell me. Okay, I don't care. Fuck it. It's fine. So there are also cash coalitions that, we had this as a milestone in the blueprint, was you needed to create cash coalitions. I know I talked about that blueprint a lot last year. I swear to God it wasn't for health, And these cash coalitions are actually coming together, and they have to be real tables and coalitions, not just we share updates about the work that we're doing. No, they have to be strategizing together. It doesn't mean you're always going to win the strategy you wanted, but you need to be actually trying to work in unison, in particular in these defense moments. You can't have one set of folks wanting to be silent and another going loud, loud, loud. It's not going to yield the positive result. You need to be able to map and say, do we have the right folks at the table, from participants to power players, who might be able to have influence. One of the biggest lessons I heard folks say from a state that battled this last year was it was extremely difficult in their state because they were just always trying to make phone calls and keep people abreast of what's going on. And also, though, in not having a cash coalition, it kind of gave one entity all the power to just set the strategy, and that strategy maybe wasn't the best one. But the truth is they just didn't have others, to be telling them, hey, we don't think you should do this, because these meetings weren't happening all the time. These coalitions aren't just for defense, my fellow blue state folk. It's also to work on your offensive campaigns. Oh, exciting, we're on slide 10. We'll be in there in a second. Beautiful. But so for my offensive, blue state folks who, these bills won't pass in New York and New Jersey, but you can be running pro-offensive GI bills to be building up champions in the interim for when your bills can pass. You can be working with participants. You can be building those other champions, those organic leaders, doctors, educators, religious folks. And so now we'll actually be on slide 10. The next resource you have, which you really just cannot discount, is a guaranteed income community of practice. It is just doubling in size, tripling actually, like every year. Our pilots, the pilots that you all comprise are in 35 states. They're not just in New York and New Jersey and California. They're in 35 states. The GICP has people from, I won't lie, it's not all 50, but it's like 45 states, And so you can't discount the strength of that group. And I'm going to remind you that it's all very open. You can meet each other, find each other. You don't have to talk to me. And find who is in your state. I can help you if it's challenging. But the folks doing, guaranteed income, who are the opposition, they are not a movement coming together. It is literally just a group of folks that are well-funded, writing pretty sloppy, you should ask your friends at the Shriver Center, sloppy copycat bills of each other. It is not an organic movement where folks in Iowa heard about this wonderful anti-GI legislation elsewhere and they wanted to replicate it. It's not what's going on. You actually have a group of folks that are saying, holy cow, I heard about TANF being used for guaranteed income. How can I do that now? Or Department of Children and Family Services. How can we replicate that? How can we advocate for a HUD direct rental assistance pilot? You actually have that, and they do not. We can go to slide 11. I'd be remiss not to mention the next GICP convening while we're talking about it, where we will actually have a chunk of it dedicated to that resource about doing race-forward guaranteed income programming, which is, now that it's done, we can actually have that workshop, and there's going to be some other things there, but that next convening, August 13th, and if you are not part of the Guaranteed Income Community Practice, you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. Let's definitely connect and get you joined with all these wonderful folks who are there. We can go to the next slide. So while we're talking about resources, you have to remember that there have been things developed over the last several years that maybe didn't seem as relevant in this moment. Things genuinely exist already, from rapid response communications trainings to what came out in April, big messaging findings on getting persuadable audiences, swing audiences, not making guaranteed income just this litany and list of a partisan issue, and actually reaching out to other folks. Those things have existed, but maybe didn't feel so relevant until this moment. And so we just want to remind you of that those things are there. We can go to slide 13. So then, this is sort of a list of other resourcing, but the bigger thing I'd like to talk about with this is, this is a group of so many different types of people. There's folks in government, there are funders here, there are so many practitioners, grassroots folks. And so I want to kind of discuss what it looks like for you all to be doing your work and resourcing one another, because that is how this works. So one of the biggest things is, and this is within the more local context in the States, actually unifying around your overarching messaging. You're going to need, I'm not really talking so much just about narrative here, I'm really talking kind of about tactical messaging. You're gonna need that to be unified and come together on what that looks like. There isn't national guidance, there's general national guidance we always give. You need to then tailor it to your folks, and you need to do that by coming together with the other people in Texas, in Tennessee, and wherever you are, and doing that work together when you're fighting a defensive fight. There are so many of you here who are TA and technical assistance providers. Re-break out those trainings that you had posted up before. Re-go to, if you are advocates, that rapid response workshops that were done, or making sure you have a strong comm strategy. Don't wait until the bill is in your session. Sessions aren't starting right now. These are the months to be proactive. For my fellow research partners, look local. Give them specific, easy to understand data points, talking points on the effects of guaranteed income, or just effects on direct cash in general that folks can then start implementing, again, now. I know, in our movement, we often talk about not working with urgency. I'm gonna go against the choir a hair here and say, in the defensive moment, you gotta work with a bit of urgency. The defense, the opposition isn't waiting for everyone to find the exact things they want to do and to kind of develop the 10-year vision for later. I would really encourage people to think about the blueprint and about its implementation, because you're going to need to kind of have a rapid response in 2025. I'll be honest, especially if we actually don't end up seeing a conservative presidency. If you don't see a conservative presidency, those fights are going to double down in states. I also say to my absolutely genuinely beloved funders who have been so wonderful in this, but funders and folks who are giving resources have often been sort of scared of this behemoth of a fight, because we think, I didn't come into this work to take on Stephen Miller and take on these biliary behemoths. I came into this work to give folks direct cash and to think about reimagining our systems. But in this moment, all of those gains that have been made will either now just become partisan, they'll only sit in the bluest of blue states, and folks are needing that resourcing. And so we need to be clear-eyed about getting involved in the defensive fight, and that is how we're meeting the moment right now. None of that is to say that we can't keep strategizing for the future, but that is the moment we're in. We can go to slide 14. So now we're going to talk about success stories. There are some, and they're really wonderful. It's not all doom and gloom, and it's very easy to feel that way when we're talking about what it is we're up against. Next slide. So I'll start with an easy one, with Illinois. In Illinois, despite it being, a bluer state, a state that's done a lot in guaranteed income, led the way in many aspects, they had an anti-guaranteed income legislation put up. It was also supported by Democrats in sort of sheep's clothing, if you will. And what happened in Illinois was that there was going to be a hearing on the anti-GI bill, and it was, these things happen very quickly. You find out about them Friday, the hearing takes place on a Tuesday. And in 36 hours, basically Monday morning, folks were able to galvanize. I put 300, I really should have double checked. I'm almost certain it was actually over 400, but I didn't want to lie. But over 300 witness slips in support of guaranteeing income, 36 hours. This was from Monday to a Tuesday morning. And that's because of their massive, their well-coordinated, I should say, cost of living refund. It's kind of their guaranteed income coalition name. It has immigration groups. It has wonderful folks like Lyft, survivor organizations that do guaranteed income, the Shriver Center, of course, ESP, so many wonderful others, but who really brought people out to sign these witness slips and say, I am actually fully in support of guaranteed income, I oppose this bill. But the best part of it wasn't just getting folks to testify, it wasn't just getting folks to sign the witness slips, it was actually that Senator Aquino, who'd been supporting the guaranteed income bill, the bill this year was a little bit more, not just symbolic, it was more than that, but it was to create sort of a guaranteed income committee on how the state could actually roll out guaranteed income. But it didn't really have an appropriations dollar amount to it. Illinois was going under a $1 billion deficit. They were like, no, don't put appropriations to it. So emboldened by how many people came out in support, he put $12 million to his bill. And that's a huge, victory for that movement. We can go to the next slide. Next is Ohio. Ohio hasn't actually had an anti-GI bill, but they have been fighting Opportunity Solutions Project and Foundation for Government Accountability for quite a while. And so they have this incredible story in Ohio of a bill, SB 17, that was to roll back SNAP and have people have to re-qualify and submit a litany more of paperwork and also make Medicaid cuts. And again, this example comes from those other national partners that we've been able to really deeply partnership with for this defense hub, because they worked on, this example. And so what they did in Ohio was they galvanized sort of a food security task force coalition of sorts, and they agreed on their message. They agreed on the actions they would do, the social media pushes. I swear to God, if I see one more state that has like 25 days of action, I'm going to send you all a strongly worded email or something, because that's not coordination. And the coordination is what gets that bigger push across. But so they agreed on messaging, they agreed on, when days of action would be. And what they did when they were agreeing on messaging is that they actually got to shift the terms of the debate, because you're having people in unison instead of having people kind of all saying their own thing. So instead of talking about budget cuts and SNAP and Medicaid and, lifting people from poverty, they actually agreed and talked about no empty bellies in Ohio and family security. And suddenly running as the guy that says, I actually do believe children should be hungry. It's not such a winning move. So they had to come together on that, because I think for people it is a shift to not just be talking about stats and poverty and to not be talking about the budget and whatnot. But if you make this just a budget conversation, if you make it just a conversation about SNAP and Medicaid, you make this just a partisan debate. And when you are in a Republican state, you will lose because your party is not in power. And so when you make this not a partisan debate, that everyone should actually be, should not want hunger, no one should go to bed with their, belly empty, it makes them the bad guy, instead of it just being, another Democrats versus Republicans, and their support dwindled, and SB 17 was fully defeated. Not only that, but their talking points, this kind of, this coalition in Ohio, were also quoted when it was defeated, because that messaging had been so strong. So that's a fabulous example. We can go to the next one. In Wisconsin and Arizona, these bills were vetoed by their governors. And I have to say, we'd be remiss not to really give credence to mayors for guaranteed income because of strong relationships they had with government. And that's okay. We don't always have, every single one of us isn't meant to do every single thing, and we literally cannot. Some folks hold strong relationships with government, and that's why we come together as a group. But what also happened in these states, and I feel extremely proud of, is we were able to move funding towards Arizona, towards Iowa in particular, and actually get some positive media, get some lobbying done. Again, orgs can do lobbying, and if you can't, you partner with the ones who can to work on their anti-guaranteed income legislation, to get some, even Republicans, to talk about how they actually don't believe in this legislation, for their own reasons, et cetera. But in Arizona in particular, we worked with the Arizona, I'm gonna mess up the name, Center for Economic Progress, and helped them write their script for phone banking, gave some support also for the phone banking against the bill, and then also helped with talking points. I'll never put this in writing. I'll never put this in email. Their governor directly, word for word, quoted those talking points when the bill was vetoed, and that's fantastic. And we all know why those things can't always just be put in writing. But next slide. So many participants here, so many of us advocates who are lived experience advocates. I myself grew up on SSI. I know many of you also are lived experience advocates. And so this quote I just love. I've used it in some slideshows before. Apologies if you've seen it in a workshop. But if we wait for someone who's going to tell our story, they're going to paint a picture of us that doesn't reflect our values, our agenda, and tell a different story of what the Black Panthers are about. But the time for staying quiet is truly gone. It's time to share those stories and share our stories as advocates, stories from participants, building up champions. But those stories have to be rooted in hope and optimism and not the doom and gloom and the AI takeover, because that doesn't bring people along with you. They want a positive vision to believe in. And that was something the Panthers were great at, was a new positive vision for folks and not just a story rooted in like the things we oppose or what terrible things are here to come. Next slide. So while my contact info is up there, I am wanting to go back to that quote I started with. First they ignore you, then they ridicule you, attack and burn you. Nicholas Klein never quite said win, but I think win is in there somewhere. And then they build monuments for you. And I truly believe we're going to win. And there will be Zaya monuments and Aisha monuments and monuments for so much of us here. And I'm ready for it. Thank you so much, guys.